All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's special webinar. My name is Ellen Wright. I am a program associate with the U.S. Heartland China Association. Today, we will hear from delegates who recently traveled to China to participate in the 2024 U.S. China Agriculture Roundtable. For those unfamiliar with our organization, USHCA is a 501c3 nonprofit that is committed to building bridges and promoting opportunities between the people of the Heartland region and the People's Republic of China. Our website is www.usheartlandchina.org if you would like to learn more. I encourage you to use the Q&A feature to submit any questions you have. We'll do our best to address as many of them as possible later in the program. At the end of the session, we'll be sending out a short survey. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback as that helps us continue to improve for future programs. This event is part one of a two-part series. The second event will be on September 12th from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, where we will hear from additional delegates. We have a short overview of the Ag Roundtable, as well as two delegations organized to attend before hearing directly from the delegates in their respective fields, and then finishing with a Q&A session. Now let's get started. I will hand things off to our moderator for this event, USHCA Executive Director, Min Fan. Min?
Thank you, Ellen, for the introduction. I'm really excited to see some of the delegates that I waved off at Binzhou Airport last, back in June. So I'd like to first give you an overview of the Agricultural Roundtable. And this 2024 Agricultural Roundtable is actually the fourth annual one. We launched in the middle of pandemic in 2021 after 2 virtual years. Last year, it was held in St. Louis. So this year, we traveled to China, where the opening ceremony and trade and business dialogue was hosted by Shandong province, which is the #1 agricultural province of China. And as you can see, there's a picture. They had a really big event venue. We had wonderful meetings and visitations around Shandong. And the second dialogue was in Beijing, where our Agriculture Education Delegation spent time with China Agricultural University. And the last dialogue was think tank dialogue at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So in addition to 3 dialogues that took place in 3 days, we actually brought 2 delegations, the Ag and Food Business Delegation and Ag Education Delegation. They spent more time before and after the dialogue to visit China. So if I can share the next map, as you can see that we started on the coastal city Shanghai, went inland a little bit to Anhui, up to Shandong, the agriculture center of China, then in Beijing. And then the agriculture education team made further trip into Xi'an. So altogether, we touched 7 cities in China. From the next slide, please. You can see that whether from university meetings to visiting just the city life, street sightseeing, and big events, experimentation centers, dialogues, dinner, farm visits. We had a wonderful enlightening trip. And I would like to actually right now to share with you a little bit of the delegation action, to play a little teaser from a video we just released for the Agriculture Education Delegation. I will mention to you that's 1 of 2 delegations that traveled to China. So when you're ready, Ellen, please, let's play that video.
In June 2024, the U.S. Heartland China Association led a special delegation of American agriculture students and faculty from 7 states, 10 universities, including 8 1890 land-grant universities, to attend the 4th annual U.S. China Agriculture Roundtable in China. They embarked on a 17-day immersive learning trip across 5 Chinese provinces and 7 cities, and engaged in eye-opening discussions on global food security and sustainable agriculture with their Chinese counterparts. Students and faculty were struck by many things. In a word, enlightening.
I want to mention the supporters and partners that made this possible. So from the soybean to the corn growers and so maybe the next slide, Ellen, we have a lot of partners that made this possible. And as you can see, we have sponsors that actually support the student travel. We have partners that provide a lot of unique visitation. But most importantly, we want to thank the Ford Foundation, Lutz Foundation, and Carnegie Corporation New York for their generous support of our organization, because we believe that the people in the Heartland, the folks on this panel, have a say in this very important relationship that's very important to our world. So now I'd like to turn to our panelists. And first, I'd like to turn to Susan Thornton. As you can see, she's the vice chair of our organization. Actually, she's also teaching at Yale, and she is also former acting assistant secretary of state for East Asia and Pacific Affairs at State Department, and many, many other roles. So we were so honored that she took a break from her farm, her own farm, to travel to China to represent the leadership of U.S. Heartland China Association at the event. So Susan, well, I just want to kind of ask you really quickly, because you traveled to China many times. So maybe you can turn to Susan. And what stood out for you from this trip? Because you were, I don't know, how many trips have you made to China this year? Maybe give people a little idea.
Yeah, I think I've made 4 or 5 trips to China this year, but it was such a privilege for me to be leading this delegation from U.S. Heartland China Association to China. It was a very unique experience, and just looking at that last slide, the pictures of all of the people just brings back a flood of memories and makes me smile and so happy. So it was really a terrific trip. For me, it was very unusual because normally when I travel to China, I go to Beijing and Shanghai. I meet with officials usually, or people who are working on sort of U.S. China strategic relations, economic, politics, the tough issues. And, I really never had a chance to think deeply about how important the U.S. China relationship is for the global food system. I mean, we are the 2 biggest producers. China is the biggest consumer and the biggest importer of food in the world, and we are a huge exporter of food. So, these 2 countries really are the key to feeding the world, and we really do need to maintain close connections and contacts. So many interesting things are happening, of course, in the U.S. agricultural sector. Now, I live in a farming community, so it was fantastic for me to be with all of the people on the delegation who are looking at all of the issues that people now in my region, I live in Maine, are experiencing and living through: weather changes, climate changes, how to make their farms resilient, how to make them more productive, how to use technology. So I learned an incredible amount from everyone. And it was also just fantastic for me to have the chance to see China through the eyes of people who, many of whom, not all, but many of whom are coming to China for the first time. So having that first impression, it also brought back a flood of memories for me, from my student years when I first went, overseas and started exploring foreign cultures. It makes such a huge impression, and it was really just such a fantastic trip. So thanks so much for asking me, Min, to be on this panel and for asking me to lead the delegation. I really loved it.
Great, wonderful. Next, actually, we're gonna shift gear a little bit to the perspective of the producer. So we actually have on this panel representing a producer, Mr. H. Barlow. I know Robert Patter might be joining a little bit later from the United Soybean Board, I believe. So Ellen, you let me know when Robert's here. But yeah, let's go to H. So I was going to ask H, how many times have you visited China? And what did you learn on this trip that's new to you about the China? And then the U.S. China collaboration around agriculture. H?
Thank you, Mia. It absolutely was a fascinating trip for me. I had a lot of preconceived ideas about what to expect. Maybe I really didn't think a whole lot about it. There was times I was a little bit even apprehensive about making the trip. But it's turned out to be a great experience. And, you know, I've always been a pretty curious person. And just to see the rest of the world, I've had an opportunity to, I've been to Kenya, to Bolivia, you know, quite a few countries in Europe. And it's so to add China to that list was really a blessing for me personally. Um, you know, when you just Susan stole a little bit of my thunder, I guess, when she's talking about the global marketplace. Obviously, my background is dairy, and it's of all of the food commodities, I think we really realize how global it is in the dairy world because we produce a perishable product that has to be moved every day, and the things that happen in there are 3 or 4 big marketplace or 4 major milk sheds and dairy in the world, and that'd be the European Union, Oceania, China, and the U.S. And China basically has just joined that. I keep up quite a lot with what's going on internationally with dairy because about 20%, it's about 18% of the milk produced in the United States is exported in the form of products. Now, that would not be fluid, but we're talking about butter, cheese, and powder. And China, it's amazingly how they have developed their own industry in the dairy world and are using much less exports than they ever have before. And I think that, that leads me to a thing of, I guess, a point that I was amazed by in China, and that is the work ethic, the everybody is working, everybody has something to do. There's no waste. We drove down when we were on those bullet trains, I call them, and you looked across the ground and you saw every inch of available land was in food production. I thought that was, pretty fascinating. We're pretty liberal with the use of our land here in the U.S. for many different reasons, but I I did not expect all of the things that I found. It was obviously the cleanest and probably safest place I've ever been, and that was very, very interesting to me. Uh, there were no different nationalities in the country. That was very amazing, according to compared to our United States, where we truly are a melting pot, I guess, and are a land of just covered up in immigrants, I suppose. Uh, and then a fascinating thing for me was there was practically zero obesity in the health and the appeared that the citizens were very healthy and weren't facing a lot of the issues that I think is really epidemic in our country today with obesity and things like that. And I take my hat off to them. I was not expecting those things. They were very fascinating to me, and I just think it was a great experience. I can continue on a little bit longer, but you can cut me off at any time. But you give me a microphone, I have a tendency to talk too much. I want to particularly take my hat off to Catherine Newton was just a joy to be with. Susan Thornton was a joy to be with, and Helen Lee they were just. I was treated so kindly, and I'll never forget those personal interactions with that group. And President Acapo, I got to meet him, and we have formed a relationship that I do treasure very much and expect to continue as we go forward. Just some thoughts about things I would like to see maybe a little bit different if you care for those. I think
maybe we'll hold that a little bit later.
Okay.
Feedback, because the reason H can have a little extra time because Robert's not here, right? So we have a little extra time. I want H to mention that you really wanted to go to that dairy farm. Remember, you really want to go to the dairy farm. And then so in Shandong, you and Susan were the only 2 delegates on this panel who actually got to go to a dairy farm in Shandong. And do you have, oh, here's Robert. So maybe really quickly, H, can you say something about how was that visit to the dairy farm, which most of us didn't get to go see?
Well, obviously that, I was kind of led to believe I was going to see several dairy farms, but it was great. I think it was basically a research dairy and a process, where they process their own milk as well. It was fantastic, and it compared favorably with the very best dairies in the United States. I've been all over the country and dealing with dairy farms, and they have nothing at that particular dairy. They don't have to take a back seat to anything that they've done or anything. Their forage production, their cow production, their cow comfort, their animal welfare, all of those were excellent. And my favorite thing, I guess, was I don't know. I think I owe Helen quite a bit and Susan for setting this up, but I've never been treated more royally in my life. I mean, it was the red carpet was laid out, and they were just so kind to me. And I did drink their milk and drink their it's drinkable yogurt, and it was fantastic. And we had a big time. It was a great fun experience, and one that I'll always treasure. And I've told lots of stories about it. It was I thought my meal was finished, and then here comes dessert, and I'd already drank about 3 pints of milk and 2 drinkable yogurts, and I was about to bust. And I was sitting by the governor, I guess, of that province, and he spun the table, the round table. I can't think what I want. Lazy Susan, we call it here, I guess. And they'd put some dessert on it, and he takes his fork and puts 3 pieces of dessert on my plate, and I thought I was going to die. But I had to eat it. It was fun. It was a tremendous experience, and I will always treasure it. But they do have the one I saw was very up to date and modern and very efficient.
Thank you, H. And now we have Robert Petter from the United Soybean Board. Robert, you showed up just in time. And tell us about how many times you visit China and what you learned about China is new to you on this trip.
Well, thank you. Good morning. I guess I should say I've been reading my emails from a combine seat. So sorry I missed the Eastern rather than Central time. But we're here. Okay. I've visited China twice now, both times representing U.S. soy, mainly presenting family farms sustainability practices and how we as farmers are working really hard to provide what the consumer is asking for. But we have to always remember we have a two-way street. It has to benefit the farmer as well. So I think they're on tune with that. So what did I learn in China? They need us about as bad as we need them. We have a number one market with China. They have a need for a lot of sustainable soy, especially with the up and coming carbon neutralization limits. So we're helping them meet those demands. However, what I also learned is that price outweighs some of that. So we're losing a little market to South America, who has a lower sustainability level and a higher carbon footprint, but price plays into that picture. So we need to maintain boots on the ground, using a farmer's adage, to keep our presence in front. Let people know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that we are here. And I think that is going to be the key. We've got to get some new, young, technology-driven individuals to make these connections. We need the representation from the farm, not hiring some PR guy from, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but we'll just say New York City, I should say. We need to be speaking for ourselves because we speak from experience and we speak from the heart. And I really believe that that is touching base and that is connecting, because as you know, in our country, we've lost connection with the family farm, and where our consumers don't know where their food came from. Well, China is experiencing the same thing. The grandparents did not live on the farm. So the children of today do not have that experience. And we've got to let them know that U.S. sustainable soy is healthy, dependable, nutritious, and sustainable, and we're here to meet their needs. So.
Well, thank you, Robert. We, first of all, really appreciate the support U.S. soybean community to not only expand the market for our farmers, but actually building peace in the effort. So thank you so much for H and Robert, and you guys were the stars of the event. We learned so much from you guys. So we're gonna move quickly to the next cohort of our panelists, which are from the education sector. So we have President Kofi Akakpo from Kentucky State University. We also have Dr. Olga Bowden-Taylor, Dean of the College of Agriculture of Tuskegee University. And finally, we have Dr. Lou Swenson, Professor of Sociology Emeritus, and as well as Vice President of Extension Emeritus, as well as Special Advisor for the U.S. Heartland China Association. So with that, I'm gonna just ask the same question. We go that order. So the question is, you all have traveled a lot. Actually, I believe President Akakpo and Dean Bowden-Taylor, you arrived in China for a different foreign country. So you have many international partners. Dr. Swenson has signed many, many international MOUs. So how does, the question is, what does interest you about China for your university? And what interests you about visiting and bring back to your school to help your students and faculties? President Akakpo?
Well, good morning. I hope you can hear me. And thank you for the opportunity actually to be on the trip and also for this occasion. Every time I go to China, I learn something new. So this time was no different. I feel bad I wasn't able to stay throughout the whole trip, but I really enjoyed visiting the aquaculture program. Our program is one of the best in the nation, but I went there with an open mind to learn, and I did learn several things that I brought back for our program here on the ground. I also enjoyed our time in Anhui University, the extension program. It is my goal to enhance our extension program. So I learned a lot from them, how they have structured the extension program. And Dr. Benin and I have been talking about it even yesterday. How are we going to implement some of the things that we have learned in China, from China into our extension program here in Kentucky. So it was a learning process for me, and I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to going back soon. I wish I'm lucky like Dr. Totten to go 4 times a year, but I look forward to the next one.
Well, President Akakpo, there is actually a World University President Conference in China that, Alan, let's follow up with President Akakpo to make sure he gets an invitation. So if you're interested, there are a lot of conferences, high-level events like that, so just let us know. Again, thank you so much for traveling to China with us, and congratulations on signing the MOU with some of the leading agricultural universities to work with your university in the future. Dean Bowden-Taylor, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And so for me, it was a very exciting opportunity. I've had the opportunity to, as you mentioned, travel quite a bit and even do a lot of work in Asia. But this was the first time I was able to actually travel into China. I have a number of colleagues and folks that I've worked alongside and done some great science with from China, as well as a number of outstanding faculty members at Tuskegee University within our College of Ag, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences. And so it was a pleasure for me to be able to visit their home country and get a chance to see firsthand some of the work. I think what was most enlightening for me was the conversation around how the U.S. can partner with China to really address global food security and do so from an educational standpoint. Across the entire world, everyone is fighting the issue with young people wanting to leave rural areas and not pursue agricultural careers, not traditionally or even with the advanced technologies. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for the need for that. And looking at how China is so invested, like many countries, in addressing global food security and doing so at the forefront, is really in line with the land grant mission, which Tuskegee University is. And so looking at how we can really utilize that teaching, research, and extension model, work with scientists and other students from China universities, especially their agriculture universities, and not only address these concerns in our individual countries, but also looking at how we can do work in Africa and other places to address global food security. I like the model that China has with a few other organizations where they're partnering with developing countries to go and do work on the ground in China to really uplift a lot of their producers and some of the agricultural practices. Tuskegee University, as an 1890 land grant institution, has a unique model where we focus and have a niche in working with limited resource producers. And this has been our bread and butter for years. We've done global work since the 1800s in this field. And so being able to partner with others who see the value in really uplifting limited resource producers, marginalized producers, like many producers are around the world. And we forget that sometimes in the United States, that when you look globally, most people are small farmers. But seeing how we can partner with these smaller farmers and work across the Eastern and Western hemispheres to really make certain that we are helping to implement the best practices from a small standpoint to large standpoint to address global food security. And I was also really fascinated about the opportunity when we think about, as been previously mentioned, about the markets and the opportunity for exporting from the U.S. to China. This is an opportunity for our smaller U.S. producers. A lot of times they're looking for alternate markets. And while we think about food farm to table locally in the U.S., for a lot of our smaller producers, those markets are hard to find, especially in more rural communities. But as we work with them to form cooperatives and clusters, there's a market for some of our multinational endeavors or endeavors with multinational companies to really give an opportunity for our producers, especially our small producers in the U.S., to be able to identify these new markets. And I'm really excited about that, and really excited about the opportunity that we were able to take students who are new leaders and burgeoning leaders in the agricultural profession to be able to see those opportunities as they think about addressing global food security and continue to fortify the agricultural economy here in the United States.
Thank you, Dean Boden-Taylor. I also want to thank you for welcoming the Chinese delegates at the Professional Agriculture Workers Conference in Monterey in the last 2 years. And so I think you have done a wonderful job building the foundation for this delegation. And now I'm going to turn to my dear friend Lou and Dr. Swenson, who actually envisioned this delegation back in 2019. Lou, please weigh in.
Well, first of all, it's really good to see everybody, even though it's Zoom and it's not Beijing or Anhui. And the other, where I would like to start, and I'm retired, so I can maybe avoid some of the university folks' perspectives. But I'd like to pick up on what Dean Boden-Taylor was mentioning, and that is global citizenship, which is also at the last part of the video that we eventually hopefully will all be able to see. At CSU, at Colorado State University, we really think, is that people to people, student to student, faculty relationships are the core for having any kind of global citizenship. And global citizenship isn't giving up national citizenship. It's realizing that we have a lot in common, which H and Robert had pointed out for agriculture. I mean, we have important missions in our daily lives that together in the aggregate can become world-changing ways of helping the world move towards addressing these great challenges, whether it's climate change, pandemics, the social justice and poverty issues globally. And so what I think this trip did, and I've taken many delegations of students and faculty to China over the years, is the people-to-people dimension. And this is something that the United States has been very good at. We're really good at people to people. The American Peace Corps experience that's now a part of what we do through the decades is to people. And what I most enjoyed in this visit, and it was really nice having a parallel delegations between the producers and the students, is the ways in which our students, and by the way, we haven't really mentioned this, but our students were exclusively coming from 1890 land grant institutions, which was in purposive, because our land grant universities all have a stake, but our 1890 land grants are particularly in a good position to work with the agricultural universities in China. And so this was an opportunity for our land grant 1890 students and faculty to visit and begin to see the opportunities for further people-to-people relationships. And finally, where I'll end up, and I think, Robert, you mentioned this as well, is the importance to trade, to cultural exchange, and to avoiding misunderstandings that lead to conflict, is that we need to also share our experiences in the U.S. Is that it's not just making sure that everybody knows that food are actually produced by farmers, which sometimes we, in extension, have to relay to our urban colleagues. But more importantly is to begin to address some of these global transdisciplinary issues that all need to be put on the land in person, whether you're in a tractor seat or you're a student or you're working in the supply chain at some point, and helping our fellow citizens to understand the importance, but also the precariousness of not attending to this global citizenship part of what we do. So I really enjoyed the trip. Susan, you were really good at every introduction of the USHCA was outstanding. I mean, you could really see how well you knew your audience. So thank you for that. So, and for the students that are on here, it's really good to see you, Kayla, and you, Jonathan. It was a good time. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Now, drum roll for the future leaders. So we have two student delegates right here, Kayla Grant, and she representing Tuskegee University. She actually was one of the award winner of the global case competition. And so this trip was part of her award. And Jonathan is a University of Maryland Eastern Shore student, and he was nominated to represent his university as well. So with that, I'm gonna go to Kayla and Jonathan again, the same question. What was new on the trip? What was new about China that you learned on the trip that you did not know? And yeah, that's a pretty open question. Kayla, do you want to go first?
That is perfectly fine. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Grant. I'm a recent graduate of Tuskegee University. I think one of the biggest things that I learned on the trip was how the United States and the People's Republic of China uses agriculture to play a big role in rural development. It's in different ways, obviously, due to varying government policies, economic structure, geography, demographics, cultural heritage. But I think it was really interesting to see how MARA, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, and the Ministry of Education work together to use university-based extension to support agricultural development, improve productivity, and enhance the lives of the rural communities. And so learning about their 5-year plan and how they trying to support rural development through like infrastructure development and financial support. I think it was really interesting to see, especially coming from a 1890 land grant university, which is designed to support the surrounding rural communities, just to see, visit their experiment stations and see how they are actively going into the community to support the rural community. I think that was really interesting to see.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, so kind of building same thing. Well, I guess I should introduce myself first. I'm Jonathan Franklin, again, University of Maryland Eastern Shore student. My major is general agriculture and I concentrate in agricultural studies. Same thing, kind of like what Kayla said. Some of the biggest differences between U.S.-China relationship, especially around agriculture. One of the big things, which is what I tend to focus on, was extension education. China has a much more of a centralized extension education system where it's ran through the government and kind of disseminated from the government down to universities and farmers and regions and localities. Whereas in the United States, it's more of a centralized system or decentralized system where it starts at the land grant universities and works its way out from the universities and the research-based science that the universities provide. Another one would kind of be practices, the agricultural practices that they use over there. They've definitely been adapted to suit Chinese needs and suit the amount of people that they have, where that's not something we see very much. We have a lot more land and a lot more arable land in the States, so we don't really see as much of the sharecropping, as much of the trying to terraform different land and trying to tetrascape to be able to do different kind of things in different environments. And the last thing I really want to touch on would be the cultural exchange. There was a really big bridge that was built between Chinese agriculture and American agriculture, especially through the 1890s universities, because it was an exchange of information and diplomacy, mainly through how we work, how our extension system works, how we practice things in the States versus kind of how they practice things in China and how their extension works over in China.
Great, thank you. And thank you also for your very thoughtful reflections. Now, in the post-trip report, we are producing a report, so your inputs will be incorporated into that. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to kind of change gear a little bit, and we're going to go backwards. So basically, the question in general is about how your experience will impact whatever field of work you do. For example, for Jonathan and Kayla, how do you think the experience you had in China will influence your future, whether it's academic, professional, personal growth? So Jonathan, how has your plan shifted or not after your trip?
So I definitely gained a more broad understanding of global agricultural practices and cultural norms, as well as kind of gaining a more nuanced perspective on how centralized and decentralized operations and systems work within agriculture. So being able to kind of see a different perspective of it reinforced that I definitely want to be in horticulture, and I definitely want to be able to be in a position where I can advocate for different types of horticulture across different cultures. As far as professional growth goes, that's definitely the big thing, being able to kind of work with horticulture and conservation horticulture, which is what I want to focus on, and being able to express that over different cultures and different countries and different worlds is one of the best things to be able to help conserve the most valuable parts of horticulture.
Great. Yeah, I want to put a plug in for Heartland Institution, the Missouri Botanical Garden, which they actually helped catalog the Chinese plants decades ago and continue to do global work. So horticulture is a very nice place. So Jonathan, good luck with that. And Kayla, I was wondering, we saw a lot of the leaders in our embassy and the consulate, actually a former HBCU alumni being the Deputy Consul General of Shanghai, and a lot of new fields and foreign agriculture services. So has that visit opened up more possibilities as you plan your future?
It most definitely has. I plan on pursuing my master's in agricultural education. And so this trip was definitely right up my alley, being a part of an agricultural education delegation. I definitely want to be a part of the next generation of informing young people about the opportunities in agriculture. And so to be able to go to China and see the Consul General who is from an HBCU from Atlanta, just like me, it was really cool to see. And it was inspiring, to know that I could go just as far and that other students could go just as far. And so I think one of the biggest things I took from this trip, it just helped transform me into more of a global citizen. Like Dr. Swanson was saying, just being aware of the wider world and my place in it. And so this trip is definitely opened some doors for me. I definitely plan on all the connections I've made, all the networking I've done, using it to my advantage and hopefully finding my place out there in the world. It's really cool to travel. It's really cool to see the world. And I think that the more people do it, you'll definitely see a lot more people-to-people interactions between the US and China, between the US and other countries, just country to country, people to people. But it's all about exposure. And so I think this project, this initiative, this trip was amazing, and I'm really appreciative for it. So thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go really a lot faster, so save time for Q&A. I'm going to ask President Okakpo and Dean Bonateller and Swenson really quickly give one example how this trip is going to turn into a tangible benefit for your faculty and students. President Okakpo, do you want to go first? Oh, you're muted. So yeah, how this will help your faculty to expand their global learning opportunity?
Well, thank you for the question. I was saying, as I alluded to it earlier, I brought some new things that I learned from Anhui University, as well as the aquaculture program that we're going to implement here in the U.S. in Kentucky. But also one thing that I took away was I think it's going to help us enhance our partnership with other countries as we work globally. I think there are a few things that I learned from China that we're going to add to what we've been doing with other countries as well. So take away, personally, I think I have made some connection, and I didn't know these people even noticed me that much, and I've been getting emails and linking information and requests to connect, and people have been sending pictures that they took of me that I did not even know. So it was a great opportunity, and again, I thank you for giving my team and I a chance to be part of.
Great. I think you guys have picked some really good university to have MOU partners. So we look forward to supporting your continued effort. Dean Bonateller, what are the tangible benefits you are bringing back to your faculty and students?
Well, Kayla really made it easy for me to answer this question. And I think she is exactly what we would like to see with regards to helping our students through these different experiences, be it going on the trip or participating in these international case studies and thinking about, global food security. And so we pledge to continue to work in this vein, partner with other institutions to make certain that our students have their eyes open to not only what is possible, but to know that they are a part of this very important global development future.
Great. And I think I'm speaking for both universities that I believe you have said you welcome Chinese partners to come visit you too, right? So we look forward to supporting that. So Dr. Swenson, final word, what do you think are the tangible things you're bringing back to this community, to educate our students in this field?
Well, it's not so much new as reinforcing, and that is American higher education really doesn't address the issues of the transdisciplinarity of issues. It's not just agricultural sciences or the social sciences, but there's so many different ways that all of us need to understand these broader issues. And we need to think more carefully about how we create degrees and other types of certificates that help our students move into the world of business and into government and to NGOs to work in teams on really complicated issues. And the second is the great gift of the land-grant university system are our experiment stations and extension services that are over 100 years old. And yet most of these are concentrated in colleges of agriculture. I mean, I was in the College of Agriculture, University of Kentucky, and worked closely with the College of Agriculture at CSU. But we really need to make extension university-wide, and the 1890 universities do that. You really don't have much choice. But the 1890s have always looked at these issues in transdisciplinary issues, and as we need to be working directly in a co-creative way with farmers and rural people. And so I think one of the things I brought back was a renewed hope that land-grant universities can develop partnerships here as well as abroad that help train our students in the broader issues and take advantage of our extraordinary experimentation and extension institutions, which really are unique in the world.
Thank you, Dr. Swenson. Now I'm going to turn to our producers. So maybe Robert first and H, what did you bring back from the trip that benefit your peers, your community? And yeah, any thoughts on that, Robert?
It's about the heartland. The name kind of says it all. Without global markets, without relationships in countries such as China. This morning, I've already been on WeChat with my friends from a couple of years ago. It's making those connections, and it is being open to helping them as well as helping us. But I don't think we need a bunch of old gray-haired men being the only ones there representing. We need the new young youth today, and their ability to speak and present the U.S. agriculture in a positive, glowing way. And because we do this again from the heart, we do this because we're farmers and we want to do it. And if I could turn you around, I live in a soybean field. So we really need a broad spectrum. And I think this is such a great opportunity to bring new generational people in, because you got to think they're bringing in new generational people as well. And those two need to work together and need to grow together. You don't need me over there 20 years from now. So anyway, so that's what I bring home. That's my message that I think that we just need to make sure we keep boots on the ground and keep U.S. sustainable soy and other products in line with the demands of China.
Yeah. You know, one thing, Robert, would you share with me really remind me the day you spoke on a big stage and people were really touched. And we forget that we're all human beings at the end of the day. You're right, price does dictate a lot of things, but you can tell when you have this trust, understanding, there's a lot more to negotiate around, right? And there's a lot more room to work with each other. So thank you, Robert, for representing the heartland, representing your community. And H, I know you, before we went on to China, there were a lot of concern. Your family was a little bit worried too. But what were you able to bring back that help your community, your peers, and maybe help your family to some extent?
Well, I think my wife just wanted to make sure I got back home. I don't know why, we've been married 52 years. I guess she hadn't got tired of me yet. But anyway, so there really wasn't a lot of fear there, I don't think. But, I appreciate what Robert said about the youth. I'm pretty long in the tooth. It's time, to bring the new generations in to represent us and to communicate for us. However, I think it's very critical that we, in our own country and in that country, I don't know how we could express it, but to get people to understand what is involved in that food production, to really get, dirt on their hands, a little from the livestock industry, a little bit of manure on their feet. It takes a lot more. We don't get our food from Kroger and Walmart. That's where we purchase it, but that's not where it starts, and that's not what happens. And I think we're a little bit in danger of losing that in touch feeling of, it takes a lot of work. It takes a tremendous amount of distribution chain, all of the processing and, that's one of the things, of course, that amazed me about the trip, going to Shanghai, 2.5 times as large as New York, I think. And to see that, all those people in those concrete buildings and, it's a beautiful city, but just think about what it took to get that food there. And, I hope we don't lose, I think it's very important that we realize where that food comes from and how it happens and how it's developed. And so those are some thoughts I thought, I mean, I would have enjoyed maybe a little more interaction. I definitely would have with actual farmers. Get on that farm, get on that land, see how they did it. I'm sure there's things we could learn from them, and I'm quite confident there's some things we could teach them. And those are just some general thoughts I've had. But I think nutrition is a big factor that we need to focus in on, and we can learn a lot from them about being healthy, I believe. And I think there's a lot of positive things that we can, that if we can, as long as we interact with each other and keep the dialogue going. I think it's important. I mean, it's better to talk than to yell at each other. And go through what the TVs say, tell me this or tell me that. As I said at the start of my conversation, my experience was nothing like what I was kind of expecting. So, I thought, and hopefully I've shared that message with some people. I put together a little video that, to share with some people, and but it was a great trip, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to go.
Great, thank you. We actually fixed the video problem, so we'll play a short teaser of our Agriculture Education Delegation shortly. But finally, to wrap up this section, I'm going to turn to Susan again. Okay, Susan, you're in so many dialogues, and the U.S.-China relation. Jake Sullivan is in Beijing, I believe, met Xi Jinping. They talk about president meeting. So how do you think what you learned from the trip, what you saw, what you hear, will help maybe the U.S.-China relationship to find a better path forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know, as H was talking about, what comes through on the TV, we know that the U.S.-China relationship is very, very complicated and that we have a lot of challenges. And so I think for me, what this trip shows is, again, the importance of that human connection, that people-to-people exchange. And during the pandemic, it really fell off. I mean, this was our fourth agricultural roundtable, but only 2 of them have been in person. We had to do a couple of them over Zoom. Zoom is great, but it's not the same thing as getting on a farm and, seeing what the farmer is occupied with, or even meeting with the provincial level officials, or certainly meeting with the Chinese students who are studying agriculture. And I think, one thing that's really come through in this discussion today, which, I mean, I don't even know if I had that deep of an impression on it during the trip, is the commonality between the US and China about how we get young people, next generations, to appreciate what goes into the food system and to be involved in rural areas. So I think the people-to-people connection is really important for U.S.-China relations.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely hope to support more exchanges like this. And as I mentioned, this is an annual event. Next year, the Agricultural Roundtable is coming back to the United States. So we hope that we'll have more. Maybe all of you could come join the event next year. We'll keep you posted. And at this point, I'm going to open up the Q&A. We have some questions coming in, but also encourage our panelists to ask each other questions if you would like. So one of the first, for one of the questions we have, it's actually about beef. I don't think we have an expert on that. Actually, we have one delegate from the beef industry, but she is going to be not on this panel today. So a question for soy. From the perspective of soy industry, do you see a situation where both China and US can be winner in this and other transactions? I guess maybe Robert already addressed this question, right?
Yes, we both need one another. There is a large need for protein in swine, beef, aquaculture, poultry. I even had the opportunity to be on a frog farm and saw the frog sandwich at the Kentucky Fried Chicken. We have a large need for that. And again, with China's implementation of their carbon neutral requirements approaching soon, we help meet that demand, and we need the market. And we have the sustainable product. So I'm hoping that that is a win-win for both countries.
Great, thank you. Another question is actually around technology. I'm going to invite everyone to weigh in if you have thoughts on that. Is how technology is used differently in China versus in the U.S. As related to agriculture. Any thoughts and reflections on that? How technology is used differently?
So from my perspective, I don't know that it's necessarily utilized differently. What I did see was very similar to what we see in the United States with regards to really adopting the new advances in technology around artificial intelligence, et cetera. We have to remember that a lot of our agricultural companies and the work and activities that we do here in the United States, these are multinational companies. We look at Syngenta that had its start here in the United States and now has expanded. They have replicated a number of the facilities that were first built here in the US, and they are also there in China, addressing issues around, you know, drought with crops growing, so on and so forth, and how to make those crops more productive in a variety of different environments. That's the exact same thing we're doing here in the United States. When we visit the colleges and universities, exactly the same. What we're trying to teach our young people in terms of adopting ag tech, including artificial intelligence, et cetera, and doing precision agriculture is exactly what we see in China. I mean, it's really important for all of us that we utilize technology as much as we can so that we can enhance food production, so that we can address our food security. China, with its large population, probably understands that more than most, especially with the limited arable land and whatnot. And so they too are adopting technology in a responsible way. And we see that evidenced in the number of publications coming out of China, even in our American scientific journals that are peer reviewed.
You know, thank you, Dean Tiller. For those of us who were in Shanghai earlier, remember we visited Aqua Farm, where a technology that was developed in the United States is actually didn't go too far in the United States, but end up helping the Chinese aquaculture tremendously. And now people are thinking it could come back, actually help the catfish industry in Mississippi. That was one idea that jumped out at us. Another question we have is actually about developing a career in China Ag. What did we learn from the USDA representative in China that could help our students or even young professional to make a career out of China Ag? I think we learned that USDA has the largest foreign agriculture services team of the whole world in China, because China is our number one ag customer. So any thoughts from that about what do you see as a career in ag? I think Robert just mentioned maybe a new career could be the marketing representative for soy, but a young person could be that, right? So, and any thoughts on career opportunities and what you learned from USDA about a career in China Ag? Well, maybe I will mention one of the, Kayla, go ahead.
I was going to say, they were the USDA and the other representatives that we met at the consulate, they were very encouraging of joining the Foreign Service and trying to expand and go and learn in China. I also heard a lot about like teaching opportunities. Like they really encourage students and educators who have an interest in agriculture, who have an educational background in agriculture, to come and teach because they're always looking for English teachers, and just to kind of bridge that gap between what we know and what they know and kind of collaborate. So I definitely heard a lot about job opportunities moving forward in China. Like you all said, it's the two biggest, US and China, two biggest economies. There's always opportunity. You just got to be willing to, I guess, go for it. But yeah.
Great. Anyone else want to weigh in about China Ag career. I will
Can I
make a
just
quick
give a
comment.
plug
Please.
in for, as I think Kayla was saying, you know, this trip really opened her eyes and made her feel like she's a global citizen. And so certainly, you know, we're all ambassadors when we're on this trip. We're all ambassadors for the United States. We're making these connections with people in China. You know, the Foreign Service, certainly we want to encourage all of our talented young people to think about a career in representing the United States around the world. I mean, it's a fascinating way to spend your life, and I loved it. But anytime you go to a foreign country, I mean, just traveling, I want to encourage people to travel, and every time you're out there, you're representing us and representing us so well. And I was just so proud of everyone on our trip, you know, being in China and talking to the Chinese and really making a very good impression for the United States in China. And I want to thank everyone for going and really appreciate that, you know, the Heartland Association has been able to do this project. So.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, at that note, we are actually 1 minute over. And so unfortunately, we are not able to answer all the questions, but definitely feel free to reach out to us. And thank you to all the panelists and also to our board member who helped produce the video. And we'll drop in the link, the full video you can watch, and as well as the registration for the second part, which is on September 12th. Thank you so much, everyone, and so good to see you. Again, Kayla, let's stay in touch. There's definitely a career in China Ag. And so actually we need more experts. We need more young ambassadors. So we're going to count on you and Jonathan and the rest of the students. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend coming up. Bye-bye.